Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News. This week is National Eye Week, so there has been a lot in the press detailing how some sight loss is avoidable. This is referring to keeping a healthy lifestyle and protecting your eyes from UV rays. We do understand that if you are living with sight loss, it can be quite difficult to listen to news stories like this, because only some sight loss is avoidable, and most of us have had no choice in the situation that we're in. However, what it does do is highlight to people that if you are able to have a healthy lifestyle, your eyes will remain healthy too. This also fits in well with the work that Jasmine does with the schools on the island. She goes in and educates children what it is like to live with sight loss, and again how important it is to keep your eyes healthy by going to the optician regularly so any problems can be spotted early. We have also recently launched the Site for Wight short story writing competition. In its 12th years and founded by our patrons R.C. Bridgefest, the crime writers, the short story writing competition is open to adults and children alike. The short stories are written this year based around the theme Vision. The theme is deliberately ambiguous so that lots of different ideas come through. For example, it may be a story regarding vision as in eyesight, vision as in the future, or perhaps vision as in a mirage in the desert. Lots of ideas come through, and our panel of secret judges enjoy reading every entry every year. The winning entries for each category, being over 18, 12 to 18 and under 12s, have their stories read by one of our celebrities. This really is a great opportunity to have your writing published and recorded by a professional artist. If you wish to enter, please don't hesitate to contact us to get an application form. Finally, this week has seen the launch of our hat and sunglasses campaign. What we are trying to do is on the 21st of June next year, being summer solstice, is have every single Isle of Wight child in school, secondary and primary wear hat or sunglasses to show how important it is to protect our eyes. We're launching the campaign early to give schools time to plan it into their schedule. So if you have anybody in one of the schools on the island, don't hesitate to encourage them to speak to their head teacher about joining in so we can have a whole island-wide united campaign to save our children's eyes for the future. Thank you very much. Stay safe, Lisa.
This is Den reading an article from On the Wight. 6 months of roadworks for roundabout with worst accident rate over the last decade. Major work to improve safety at the busy Smallbrook roundabout on the outskirts of Ryde is to begin next month. The project by Island Roads for the Isle of Wight Council will introduce several safety features at Smallbrook, which over the last decade has amassed the worst accident rate of any island junction, with 22 injury collisions recorded. Work is due to begin on the 4th of October and last an estimated 6 months, avoiding the peak tourist season and minimising impact on wildlife. During work, the junction will be controlled by temporary traffic lights and Smallbrook Lane will be restricted to one-way eastbound towards Ryde. The non-residential end of Carter's Road will also be one-way eastbound from the last property towards its Ashy Road junction. If progress with the scheme permits, the one-way restriction will be removed for the festive and New Year period. Safety features include realignment of the junction's approaches and introduction of new traffic islands which will require traffic to slow down and negotiate the new roundabout rather than straight running across it. Visibility on the roundabout approaches will be improved, especially for traffic approaching from Smallbrook Lane and Carter's Road. There will also be additional street lighting, a street limit restriction from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, and anti-skid slow-down strips will be laid at the approaches to the new realigned and relocated roundabout. Some vegetation deemed poor value habitat will be lost to accommodate the scheme, but working with ARC Consulting throughout the project, there will be a replanting programme of native species and the introduction of 6 dormice boxes to enhance biodiversity at the site. The project, funded by Government Local Transport Plan grant, will also require utility services to be diverted, and this aspect will take an estimated 2 months. Councillor Phil Jordan, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, said, "Naturally, there will be some disruption while the work is underway, but given the accident rate here, we must be prepared to improve safety at this junction for everyone. I am mindful that grant funding will pay for the work, and we will continue to keep the community informed on progress. We would like to thank motorists in advance for their understanding and patience while we deliver this much-needed and improved road safety scheme."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio, headlined "Greed Not Need, Say West Wight Villagers Over Housing Development That Has Zero Support." The development is about greed and not need, say a number of upset local residents in Freshwater who have slammed the latest greenfield development in the town that has zero support. As previously reported by Isle of Wight Radio, Tallulah Estates submitted an application for outline permission for 130 homes on Camp Road. Safety and accessibility problems, an impact on local services, concerns about rare wildlife and the issue of the roads and infrastructure. These are just some of the issues that have been raised by locals. Local resident Lindsay told Isle of Wight Radio the field on Camp Road is also notorious for flooding. She said, "The field floods horrendously, and so does Camp Road, regularly throughout the year. Back in 2014, a gentleman was actually run over and really seriously hurt, and then later died. That was because he was walking out to avoid the flooding, and everyone is scared that could happen again. It's really concerning. In the reports online, they actually said it doesn't flood, but it does, and that was a serious accident. Previous attempts have been made to develop the site, but plans from 2013 for 8 houses were turned down due to insufficient information in planning documents. The site of the new housing scheme is allocated for at least 90 homes in the draft island planning strategy. As only outline plans have been submitted, all detailed matters relating to the final scale, layout, appearance, access and landscaping will be determined through later applications. An association has been formed in the West Wight that aims to protect greenfield land from overdevelopment and calls for developers to address local need, not just build. Lindsay added, "The people who have put this forward, I believe, are no sale, no fee. People that try and get the planning permission, and if they do, they get a cut. We haven't engaged with them because I think they have put up their arguments in their reports. We all question the validity of the reports. For example, the ecology report has not been completed by qualified ecologists. The BAT report, again not by qualified ecologists and not at the right time of year, and was not completed in the right amount of time. She says it has zero support from the community and asks why developers are looking at planning permission on greenfield land when there are other brownfield sites around the island. Island Roads and Hampshire Constabulary are among the application's objectors. Last Friday, the island's MP Bob Seeley met with residents to discuss the application, which he is not supporting, and to hear calls from locals. As previously reported, the developers were not present. Mr. Seeley said, "I would like to thank all the residents that shared their views on these plans. This is an exceptionally large development for a small rural town, and one that is clearly not wanted by residents or justified by housing need. I'm concerned about the impact of this development on existing residents, health services, infrastructure and the environment. It would cause havoc in a small town. Island Roads have recommended the application is refused, and I share their concerns about significantly increased traffic volumes and the lack of thought that the developers have given to pedestrians and cyclists in the scheme. New housing schemes should give much greater consideration to green travel than this development has, and the safety of all residents and highway users should always come first." Mr. Seeley added, "I share the concerns of Hampshire Constabulary about the opportunities the layout of the development creates for crime and disorder. It is clear that this development has not been thought through with the safety of residents in mind. Freshwater Councillor John Medland has previously called the development completely inappropriate and says Sandown Bay would be better suited for it. Comments on the planning application, which is the number 21/01552/OUT, can be submitted until Friday 24th September. Andrew Wight planning agents defended the allegations and told Isle of Wight Radio, inevitably, a proposed development of this scale on greenfield land surrounded by other properties will generate a whole range of concerns. Throughout the preparation of this application, we fully engaged with the local planning authority and have fully taken on board the feedback that was provided. Our application is accompanied by numerous technical reports prepared by suitably qualified professionals, and we will happily provide any further clarification or information to address any queries that are raised by the statutory consultees. Similarly, the applicant will enter into a Section 106 legal agreement to ensure that the development contributes to or provides the necessary infrastructure to support a development of this scale. Significantly, the legal agreement will include an obligation upon the developer to provide around 46 much-needed affordable homes.
Future of homeless support accommodation uncertain again following planning committee decision from On the Wight, Iona. The future of homeless support accommodation in Newport is now uncertain after the Isle of Wight Council rejected its request to take off a safety net timeframe. Deciding in favour of Castle Road residents who had objected to the scheme, the Council's Planning Committee voted to keep a condition that limits a house of multiple occupancy, or HMO, on Castle Road to operating for 3 years only. The committee did so to ensure the applicants, Two Saints, operated in best practice and dealt with any issues properly. However, plans stalled since the original permission was granted back in July because of funding complications. Two Saints was hoping to receive money from Homes England to buy the Castle Lodge B&B, make changes and charge affordable rent. The 3-year stipulation, however, was not welcomed by the funding body, who said it only supported projects with a longer guaranteed lifespan of 35 years. Speaking at the planning meeting yesterday, Two Saints Regional Director James McDermott said there was a very real housing crisis on the Isle of Wight, which is only going to be worsened as housing prices continue to rise. He said it was the last thing on their mind to bring this back before the planning committee, but wanted to confirm their commitment to the council in reducing homelessness in line with the Isle of Wight Council's strategy through to 2024 to ensure everyone on the Isle of Wight has a place that they can call their home. He said the HMO would give people an opportunity to live their lives while bringing extensive support to the community. However, a Castle Road resident representative said they had lost all their trust and faith in Two Saints, but thanked the committee for originally installing the 3-year probation period, providing a protective safety net for residents. Local councillor Joe Lever, who was unable to attend the meeting, said the committee only had to answer one simple question to determine whether the application should be granted, whether the actions of Two Saints or new information put forward significantly resolved the concerns. The committee had to warrant the removal. Councillor Matthew Price, who suggested installing a time condition in June, said he'd come into the meeting wanting to be convinced by Two Saints, but had been provided with very little and questioned whether anyone felt more comfortable than they had done previously. After originally being sceptical of the 3-year timeframe, Councillor Jeff Brodie said his view on the application had changed following problems in his ward with the Howard's House Assessment Hub, a Stage 1 homeless support centre at the former Barton Primary School. He said the 3-year condition for Castle Lodge, which would be Stage 2 homeless support, was a safety net that his residents did not get. Councillor Chris Jarman said it had been made clear to him that while the Isle of Wight had a housing crisis, it needed to be managed and well maintained to benefit everyone, and the opt-out clause of the application was critical. All but one of the councillors on the committee voted to reject the application, with Councillor Michael Beston abstaining from the vote. Two Saints has been contacted for a comment.
Hello, this is Sue reading an article from On the Wight. County Hall Reception, Isle Help and Ride Help Centre reopened for essential pre-booked appointments. County Hall Reception, Isle Help and Ride Help Centre have reopened for essential pre-booked appointments only. Ride Help Centre will be open on Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays only. For urgent information, advice and guidance, appointments can be booked by calling 01983 823 134, where an advisor will discuss your inquiry and whether it can be resolved by an alternative method. Councillor Chris Jarman, Cabinet Member for Strategic Finance, Corporate Resources and Transformational Change, said, "I am pleased we're able to reopen our front door, but must stress that while COVID-19 is still with us, I would still encourage people to minimise face-to-face inquiries with the council or I'll help wherever possible. Many council transactions and inquiries can be undertaken online or electronically with I'll help. People visiting our offices and venues across the island are strongly encouraged to wear a face covering where possible, use the hand sanitizer available and keep their distances from others. It might be helpful to know that you can pay your council tax online by direct debit or at your local bank or post office. You can report changes for housing benefit, council tax benefit and council tax online or via email. You can submit evidence to support claims such as housing benefit and council tax benefit online or by email and uploading proof. Citizens Advice, I'll help, also continues to operate an appointment system and can be contacted on advice line 0800 144 8848 and text phone 18001 0800 144 8884.
Award-winning Isle of Wight bakery sad to shut up shop. From Isle of Wight Radio, Iona. An award-winning bakery on the Isle of Wight is closing one of its shops on the island. Grace's Bakery, which was commended for its outstanding support in the local community during the pandemic, says it's sad to announce the Cowes store will shut permanently. According to staff, the landlord will not be renewing the lease, which has come to an end. Staff will be relocated to its shops in Newport High Street and Pyle Street, and it'll shut the one in Cowes from Friday. Posting on Facebook, staff said, "We're very sad to announce that our little shop in Cowes will be closing permanently from this Friday. It's been such a pleasure to serve the people of Cowes over the past 12 years, and we're endlessly grateful to all our customers that have supported us during that time. Unfortunately, our lease has to come to an end, and our landlord will not be renewing it, so it is the end of an era. Our staff will be relocated to our Newport High Street and Newport Pyle Street stores, so we would love to welcome our Cowes customers there. Don't forget, we can also deliver to you for free Monday to Friday when you spend £8 or more in our shop online."
This is Den reading an article from Island Echo. Age UK Isle of Wight work with Island Roads on improving access for older people. A project to look at access issues for older people has led to a new partnership between Age UK IW and Island Roads. The Pavements Are for People project, which explores common access issues for older people, has been co-produced by members of the Age UK IW Older Persons Steering Group, the Age Friendly Island team and Island Roads. The useful resource covers topics such as parking on pavements, overhanging hedges and various trip or slip hazards, and explains which organisations are responsible for access issues and how to report matters of concern. The work is part of the charity's overall drive to help develop an age-friendly community on the Isle of Wight as part of a global initiative driven by the World Health Organization. This wider initiative looks at all aspects of people's physical and social environment and aims to support healthy, active ageing for everyone and access for all. Age Friendly Island is part of Ageing Better, a programme set up by the National Lottery Community Fund, the largest funder of community activity in the UK. Ageing Better aims to develop creative ways for people aged over 50 to be actively involved in their local communities, helping to combat social isolation and loneliness. Over 40 organisations have already signed up to the Age-Friendly Island Charter Pledge, and Island Roads is the largest to join in making its commitment both in terms of the wider pledge and the newly created Digital Friendly Pledge. Island Roads Service Director Steve Ashman said, "We have done some work previously with Isle Access through our training programme to help our staff. We understand some of the challenges faced by people in the community who are less mobile. This new partnership with Age UK IW is a natural next step, and we are looking forward to continuing our work with the charity to see what we can do to support older people as we carry out our work on the island." Age-Friendly Project Manager Emma Lincoln said, "Keeping pavements clear for people, particularly those with mobility issues or sight challenges, is vitally important so they can continue to use them freely and safely in their everyday lives. This project has helped pinpoint the type of challenges faced by older people, and we are grateful to Island Roads for their help in working with us to create this useful resource. We look forward to their continuing involvement with Age-Friendly Island and in welcoming other organisations to sign up to our Charter and Digital Friendly Island pledge. The Pavements for People resource is available to download or read online at www.ageukiw.org.uk. Or you can order a hard copy to be posted out to your home by calling 01983 525282 or by emailing agefriendlyireland@ageukiw.org.uk.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio, headlined God's Hill Pub The Taverners rated in the top 50 UK gastropubs. A God's Hill pub has been rated amongst the best gastropubs in the UK. The Taverners have been recognised as being among the best in the Big 7 travel rankings. The list, which is now in its second year, was determined from a combined score of readers' suggestions throughout the year, online user reviews, and Big 7 Travel's editorial team. Describing the Taverners, the online site said, "The Taverners is a proper, quaint country pub, with a menu full of locally farmed ingredients. They buy fresh produce daily depending on what is available at the markets from the farms and what has been caught, foraged, shot or hunted. As well as yummy dishes such as salt roasted God's Hill pig face, you can sip on their homegrown vin d'orange, sloe gin and green walnut liqueur."
Yacht becalmed and engineless near Shipping Lane, assisted by Bembridge Lifeboat. From Island Echo, Iona. Bembridge Lifeboat launched to assist a 36-foot yacht that was becalmed and engineless in the main shipping channel close to No Man's Land Fort this morning, Wednesday. The all-weather lifeboat launched down the slipway just after 10 a.m. after the request of Solent Coast Guard. Reports have been received that a lone skipper on board a 36-foot steel ketch needed assistance as the vessel was becalmed and without a working engine. Conditions were very benign, so it didn't take the lifeboat and its volunteer crew long to reach the yacht and ascertain that the engine failure was due to a snapped fuel filter. Having carried out a dynamic risk assessment, it was decided that the best option was to tow the yacht, which was transmitting from Brighton to Bournemouth, into Portsmouth. After safely berthing her alongside Endeavour Quay, Bembridge Lifeboat returned to Bembridge and was rehoused by 11:50.
Hello, this is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Hopes for 7 houses in Gurnard quashed after more than 60 objections. Previously rejected last year, a second application put forward by Glenn Hepburn of Hepburn's Planning Consultancy have followed the same route, with planning officers finding 6 reasons to refuse the outline permission. The application for the housing scheme on Lower Church Road and Cockleton Lane had drawn more than 60 objections from residents, with only 3 in favour. Gurnard Parish Council were amongst those to object and even called an extraordinary meeting to discuss the application, ultimately deciding the housing would go against the Gurnard neighbourhood plan and have a detrimental impact. Those in favour of the development of all the two-bed houses said it would enable young families, some who may have lived in Gurnard their entire life, to be able to afford a property in the area. It had been argued in the most recent planning application that the reasons for refusal had been overcome. However, despite the changes, one of the same reasons for refusal given last year has remained. The development would still result in an urbanising impact which would detract from the rural character of the area, and by virtue its encroachment into the undeveloped nature of the Gurnard Luck Valley. The proposal also failed to mitigate for affording housing or the identified impacts of the Solent Special Protection Area. Concerns were also raised to the archaeological nature of the site, as only a desk-based assessment was carried out. The assessment said that there was moderate to high potential of deposits from the Iron Age and Roman date which could be of high significance. Planning officers said a more in-depth evaluation needed to be done prior to any positive determination of the application. Areas of the scheme had improved, though, and overcome the impact on neighbouring properties due to reorientation and movement of some units. The applicant does, however, have the right to appeal the decision to the Planning Inspectorate should they wish.
This is Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Big improvements as CQC rate the Isle of Wight NHS Trust as good overall. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust has been rated as good overall following an inspection by the Care Quality Commission, CQC, a significant improvement on the previous requires improvement rating. The Trust is the only integrated acute, community, mental health and ambulance healthcare provider in England. Overall, the Trust provides 23 core services for acute, community, mental health and ambulance services. Between the 22nd of June and the 23rd of July, the CQC inspected a range of the Trust's mental health and community services, as well as 5 of the Trust's acute core services. These services included diagnostic imaging, medical services, surgical services, gynecological services, and children and young people's services. CQC also looked specifically at management and leadership of the Trust to answer the key question, is the Trust well led? Inspectors found that a number of improvements had been made and embedded throughout the Trust since their previous visit in 2019. As a result, the Trust's overall rating has been upgraded from requires improvement to good. It is also rated as good for whether its services are safe, effective, caring, responsive and well led. As this is a combined trust, each service type was also rated. Acute services and community services were rated as good overall. As only some of the Trust's mental health services were inspected, the service was not fully re-rated and it requires improvement. However, inspectors did note a number of improvements had been made across the mental health inpatient and community teams and acknowledged the work towards improving the care for people that use services. CQC has also recommended that the Isle of Wight NHS Trust should be taken out of System Oversight Framework Level 4 of the new Recovery Support Programme, previously Special Measures, from a quality perspective following this inspection. Ted Baker, CQC's Chief Inspector of Hospitals, found that sufficient progress had been made to justify the recommendation to NHS England and NHS Improvement, although the Trust will receive ongoing support to ensure that its performance continues to improve. Ted Baker said, "At this inspection of the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, we found sustainable improvements have been put in place and embedded. This is a great achievement, the more so as it has taken place against the background of the COVID-19 pandemic." Throughout the inspection, the team received feedback that was overwhelmingly positive about staff often going the extra mile to support patients. The care and support received exceeded patients' expectations, and this has resulted in the Trust's community services receiving an outstanding rating for being caring. The Trust has worked incredibly hard to put the improvements needed in place, and I am happy to recommend to NHS England and NHS Improvement that the Isle of Wight NHS Trust should be taken out of System Oversight Framework Level 4 of the new Recovery Support Programme following this inspection. I want to congratulate all of the staff and the leadership at the Isle of Wight NHS Trust for their hard work and dedication during this time. We look forward to returning at a later date to see what further improvements have taken place. Although the CQC found a number of examples of outstanding practice during this inspection, there were some areas for improvement. The Trust must ensure there are enough clinical psychologists and other appropriate staff to meet the needs of patients requiring this service, and that patients are supported appropriately if they need to wait for long periods. The Trust must ensure the environment at the health-based place of safety on Seagrove Ward is fit for purpose and meet the requirements of the Mental Health Act Code of Practice, and ensure that the environment provides dignity and respect to users of the service. The Trust must ensure that on Osborne Ward, staff update patients' risk assessments following an incident to reflect changing risks and care needs. Maggie Oldham, Chief Executive of the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, has said, "The people who make up our Trust have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic, and even with all of those challenges, they never lost focus on improving the services we provide to our community. It has been a long road to get to good, and I am so proud of everyone that has contributed to this success. My sincere thanks go to all our staff, our volunteers, our partners, and to our community for all their support. Being rated good by the Care Quality Commission isn't the end of our improvement journey. We know that there is more we can do, and our focus now will be on working with our partners to sustain the progress we have made and to ensure that our services are sustainable. I hope everyone working at the Trust can take a moment to appreciate the scale of this achievement and to reflect on their important contribution to our improvement. None of this would be possible without our wonderful staff. I cannot thank them enough." Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley said, "Delighted to hear the Isle of Wight NHS Trust has been rated good overall following its recent inspection. This is a very significant achievement by the island's NHS teams, who have managed to raise standards and improve services despite the added pressures of COVID-19. My thanks go to everyone working at the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, in the ambulance service, at St Mary's Hospital, in community services, and in mental health and learning disabilities. The challenge now is to sustain this improvement and to make sure that services continue to meet the needs of islanders."
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio, headlined "Professor Chris Whitty highlights health inequalities in coastal communities." Mental health, substance misuse and medical workforce recruitment. Despite the benefits of living on the coast, England's Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, has said more needs to be done to address health inequalities that coastal communities face. In his annual report, Professor Whitty calls for a national strategy to address the repeated health problems, saying if nothing was done to tackle them vigorously and systematically, there would be a long tail of preventable ill health which will get worse as current populations age. The Isle of Wight Council's Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care discussed the very interesting and revealing factors earlier this week and echoed issues that needed to be addressed. Problems like deprivation, mental health, and alcohol and drug abuse were identified to be considerable health challenges on the island and in other coastal communities. Other key drivers to improve health and well-being were said to be wider than health, like housing, education, employment and transport. Professor Whitty said those issues should not be faced and fixed by local communities alone and needed a much larger response effort. Welcoming the report, Councillor Michael Lilly said the issues raised in the report were a reality on the island and the report should be used to argue for more resources. He said it was not often a national report supports everything they have been saying and campaigning for. Councillor Lilly said funding streams for coastal communities need to be explored to help address some of the issues. Professor Chris Whitty said coastal communities had been overlooked and as a result, limited data was known about the health and well-being of those areas. He said, while the focus over the summer has been directed towards visitors choosing to stay on the coast, it is important to remember it is also home to millions of people whose health and well-being has long been neglected and overlooked. The island's Director of Public Health, Simon Bryant, said he was part of a South East group to take the recommendations of Professor Whitty's report forward. Councillor Lilly also suggested asking MP Bob Seeley and other important channels to use the report to highlight issues and help with solutions.
Hello, this is an article read by Sue from On the Wight. Bring back a dedicated road policying unit is call from officers on the ground, says councillor. At last week's full council meeting, the councillor for Binstead and Fishbourne, Ian Daw, Allowance Group, was praised for his research on the motion about mobile average speed cameras. Councillor Daw was speaking during the debate on the motion that called for £300,000 to be spent acquiring mobile average speed cameras, an aim of the former Conservative Council and renewed by the leader of the Isle of Wight Conservative councillors, Councillor Steve Hastings. The councillor had received praise from other members because before he voted on the motion, he'd make the effort to speak to a number of police officers seeking their views on the use of mobile average speed cameras. He started by explaining that he'd been previously involved with a community speed watch scheme. When I was considering standing for Binstead and Fishbourne, there had been 2 speeding petitions that had been ignored over the years. Coupled with reports that it was still going on, I personally think you have to witness it yourself before committing. So I borrowed a speed gun in February and got out to see for myself. Over 2 weeks of gleaning results in Binstead across the relevant roads reported, the observations were confirmed. The same for Fishbourne. So the thoughts of community were 100% correct with speeds of 50 to 70 miles per hour on Binstead Hill. Not ideal given the volume of children that frequent the park, the post office and over a pedestrian crossing. Councillor Daw went on to say, my view of the funding of speed cameras is that it's fundamentally flawed, not least because they can easily be circumnavigated, but it's simply not the best solution. I'm not shooting Councillor Hastings down on this. If anything, it's good to see engagement, and we communicated about it prior to the meeting. The issue is one of a square peg for a round hole. Explaining the loss of the island's police road traffic unit, he continued, the Isle of Wight lost its police road traffic unit some 7 years ago. And it's also probably no coincidence that across the board from 2009, when austerity started, the positive results in speed reduction plateaued. Sadly, from 2019, things have got even worse, with such issues increasing steadily and by considerable numbers too. Looking at the Road Safety Foundation data, it's clear to see that the island has two persistently high-risk roads, the A3055 and the A3054. The issues span from one end to the other, top to bottom. Throw in some medium-risk roads and it's clear that there is no one isolated area. We have 136 kilometres of road that is persistently high risk or medium risk. Just because cameras could be an option doesn't mean that they are the best option. Having spoken with police officers on the ground, the solution to the rising problem of speeding came back to a reinstatement of the dedicated road policing unit. After speaking to a number of police officers who aren't what you would call political level, the solution is always the same: bring back a dedicated road policing unit. That responsibility, and indeed budget, forms firmly at the feet of the head honchos in the Hampshire Constabulary. To that end, I've asked Donna Jones, the Police and Crime Commissioner, for a meeting to see what can be done to get it reinstated. Councillor Dorr continued, I wouldn't rule out supporting some degree of budget coming from the council to assist in getting this up and running. But let's be clear, it should not be for the local taxpayers to provide a level of service when it should come from the police coffers. The austerity cuts to policing and many other services were short-sighted and irresponsible. Now the negative results are really starting to be seen, and with some new faces in the chairs, one hopes exceptions can be made and smarter decisions taken. He went on to say, a dedicated RPU can also deal with drug and drink driving, cars not being safe for the road, antisocial behaviour, insurance dodgers and other issues. A speed camera is a one-trick pony, barely with all four legs as they are so easy to avoid. As a first defence, I urge all councillors to set up a speed watch campaign in the communities they represent, whilst the appropriate committee discuss the options. The latter, however, has to include police participation to give it legitimacy and accuracy, with offers being given freedom of speech, not hushed up from above, because the gritty truth does not fall within a political narrative. The fact is that Island's police need more funding to provide the level of services that Islanders deserve. Councillor Dorr finished by saying, police officers and frankly all blue light services are under extreme pressure to deliver what has been promised. Now is the time for those in very senior positions to address the crisis. What has been taken away now needs to be given back, and some. The motion put forward by the Conservatives last week to purchase the mobile average speed camera, as agreed by the former Conservative Cabinet in November 2020, and as part of the approved budget in February 2021, was amended by the Allowance group. Rather than just acquiring the cameras, the amended motion agreed to continue to develop a business case to investigate the cost and effectiveness of the cameras. Councillor Darrell Pitcher, Vectis, abstained. Councillor Dave Adams, Allowance, voted against, and all the other councillors voted in favour of the amended motion.
Isle of Wight Band planned thank you gig for NHS and emergency services staff from On the Wight, Iona. Entrance is free for those with an NHS or emergency services ID and £5 for others, with proceedings being donated to NHS Charities Together. Isle of Wight band Blackfoot Daisy are performing a gig at New Close Cricket Club to say a special thank you to local key workers. The gig, which is taking place on Saturday, the 30th of October, will be free for anyone holding an NHS or Emergency Services ID. Young Isle of Wight performers Anna Parkinson and Cameron Frame will be the support act for the evening. Blackfoot Daisy singer Sarah Searle says the last 18 months or so have been really tough for everyone, performers like us included. But we owe such a great debt to those who have and still are putting themselves on the line for all of us. This gig is the best way to say thank you to them. But who is Blackfoot Daisy? Blackfoot Daisy is made up of experienced musicians from the Isle of Wight's music scene. Tim Marshall, Sarah Searle, Joe Saunders, Jenny White and Jamie Woodford. They play modern and classical country covers by the likes of Dolly Parton, Ward Thomas, The Shires and Carrie Underwood. Drummer Jamie, who's also a frontline volunteer for HM Coast Guard, said, "As an emergency services key worker myself, I've seen firsthand the impact this devastating pandemic has had on my colleagues. It feels great to be able to give them something to say thank you." As well as giving key workers free entry, all other tickets are £5 each, with proceedings going to NHS charities together. When's it taking place? It's taking place on Saturday the 30th of October at New Close Cricket Ground. Doors open at 6:30 and music starts at 7. Tickets on the door are free for anyone showing ID of being in the NHS or emergency services.
This is the second part of the Talking News, read by Howard and
Tressa.
We begin with letters to the editor.
Before we start the second part of the County Press, here is this week's society news. The new swimming group at Medina is on every Monday at 1:30 p.m. Transport is available and the cost is £5 and £2.50 for the transport. New members always welcome.
Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10 a.m. until 11:30, and it's only £1 to include the cake and coffee. Come along and spend time with members and staff discussing various topics, etc.
The Thursday Mix and Mingle is held every week starting at 10:30 and finishing at 2. If you would like to come along, please call the office to book a space. Transport can be arranged if required. This week, the group enjoyed having their own Chelsea Flower Show themed day, and members were encouraged to have a go at flower arranging with some wonderful finished exhibits.
The new Yarn at Millbrook group started on Monday. This is open to all members, volunteers and friends who enjoy anything to do with yarn. People enjoyed knitted and crocheting, and it's hoped that more people will join them on the 4th of October. The group is held on Mondays fortnightly between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. and the cost is £1 for refreshments.
Our God's Hill Coffee Morning will resume on Tuesday the 5th of October at the Old Smithy Tea Rooms. Anyone is welcome to pop along and enjoy a coffee and a chat. We are very grateful to our volunteers Yvonne and Linda who are running this event on behalf of us.
For more details, please don't hesitate to call the office, or to book your space, please call Susan on 52205.
Now, the first letter to the editor is from D. Painter from Ventnor and is entitled "French Should Ask Themselves Tough Questions." The French complain about lying, duplicity, a major breach of trust and contempt. But many will remember when the French, a member of NATO, sold Exocet missiles to Argentina during the Falklands War. I would imagine the US and Australians would have reservations about how secure their nuclear technology was if the French became party to the manufacture of their nuclear-powered submarines. I fully agree with the French when they say they would do well to ask themselves tough questions.
This from Richard Crossley in Ventnor. In reply to Edward Hill's letter re Concord and Bembridge Airport, County Press 17th of the 9th 21, I regret that the picture is a fake. The length of Bembridge Airport runway is 830 metres and Concord needed a minimum runway length of around 3,000 metres for takeoff.
The next letter is from Anna Hardy from Shanklin and is entitled "Who Monitors the Use of E-Scooters?" Who can tell me who is responsible for the use of e-scooters on the Isle of Wight, as I am led to understand that they are on trial? My dog was almost run over by one on September the 19th on the cycle path between Shanklin and Wroxall. The wretched thing came barrelling up at speed. with blaring music, and my dog, who has 100% recall, took off terrified, and I had big trouble getting her to stop and come back to me. I tried to ask the council if they are allowed on cycle paths, but they didn't know, and I was given a Midlands telephone number that doesn't respond to your calls and just cuts you off. So what's being done to help us keep our pets safe? Where are these scooters legal and where are they not? Who do we contact? Council, no joy. Police, website does not accommodate this incident. Local councillors, who please? Everyone seems to pass the buck.
This letter is regarding the floating bridge from Richard Hollis, former chair of the Corporate Scrutiny for the Isle of Wight Council, COWS. Once again, the floating bridge is out of order. Nothing new there, but what seems to have changed is the attitude of ruling independent group in the Isle of Wight Council. Your readers will recall that they were in control in 2014-15 when FB6 was conceived, designed, commissioned and built. Before the elections in May this year, any breakdown was met by the Indies with howls of blame on the Conservative administration as to why it was their fault. Councillor P.C. Wilcox, now leader, said that the only solution was for the floating bridge to be scrapped. Now, suddenly, she claims to have acquired magical powers to speed up the legal process, but doesn't say how this will resolve the problems in the long term. So why, when the last Conservative administration was wasting taxpayers' money, keeping the vessel going, and pursuing a claim against the designers and builders, is it all right for the independent group to now spend public money doing the same? When it was commissioned, the ruling independent group ignored published guidance on procurement for major local government projects, namely a requirement for a board to be set up comprising councillors, experts and operators to oversee the project. Instead, this was left to unqualified council officers and a so-called expert whose CV suggests he was also unqualified for the job. Ian Stevens, then leader of the council, has publicly stated that he didn't get involved. Put simply, even a layman can see that the design of FB6 is never going to work. The previous floating bridge was struggling with the change of tidal regime from the breakwater. With 3,500 cubic feet of extra laden displacement, the current bridge has no chance. The way forward, pursue the litigation to recover a full refund and all losses from the insurers and or the designers or builders, while simultaneously commissioning Wight shipyards to build a new design in aluminium. They have the expertise, and the island would benefit from the use of local labour. The alternative, build a twin lifting bridge. If the will is there, it could be done.
The next letter is from Marilyn Thorpe from Chillerton and is entitled Help Needed to Find a Lost Gift. I am in search of a lost gift. A complete set of DVDs of the French version of Downton Abbey. When I left France after living there for 15 years, I came to live on the Isle of Wight. I was given this lovely leaving gift, and I feel very guilty that I never watched any of it. In around 2017 or sometime after, I put a lot of books into the Newport British Heart Foundation shop. But I do believe that with them I inadvertently also put this full new video DVD set of this French version of Downton Abbey, which I had never watched or even opened properly. I would like to tell the people who gave it to me that I have watched it, but due to my error cannot do so. I'm prepared to offer a donation to whoever might have bought it and who may not want it.
This is regarding the negative impacts of a fixed link and is from Sam Turner in Sandown. Reader Tony Toller of Totland is far too simplistic in his reasoning for promoting a fixed link to the island, talking only of the financial argument of travelling to and from the island, completely ignoring the negative impacts to island life, all discussed 20 years ago at the last consultation, where the negative impacts far outweighed any improvement, with the fixed link being dropped then. One and foremost, a fixed link bridge was put completely out of the question at that time by the government for conservation reasons over the Solent. I was active back then in AFLAG, Against Fixed Link Action Group, where we had over 3,500 islanders joining our group to oppose the fixed link. We delved deeply into the negative impacts on the island, with much of our research involving Hampshire and IW police, who advised us of the serious increase in crime that would overtake the island should the link come to fruition, where roll-on, roll-off uncontrolled traffic would negatively impact the island, increased crime being high on the list of negative impacts. And this is where Mr. Toller's reasoning fails miserably, considering only the financial side of the argument and ignoring completely the negative impact on island life. And here's more. The island would become a second-rate dormitory of Portsmouth. Second home owners would flood here unrestricted, negating any chance of our youngsters being able to buy their own affordable homes, and this at a time when the government is trying to clamp down on second home ownership nationwide. And double-edged to this, far more mainlanders would move here to commute to the mainland for work, with the further negative impact of far more school places and GP practices being required, plus increased hospital and nursing care. The hotel trade would suffer more, and more day trippers popping over just for the weekend and less weekly or fortnightly staycations. The island's rural road network couldn't cope with the extra traffic, plus many other negative factors. If you put islanders' lives first, notwithstanding ferry costs, you wouldn't be thinking of a fixed link at all, as this is far more than just about convenience of travel. It's about the negative impact on all islanders' lives. We've had over 100 years of debate calling for a fixed link. The negative impacts have always won the day. There is so much in the national press these days of people living in Britain who hate the British way of life. My advice to them is to leave our shores. Likewise, those who hate island life, my advice to them also is to leave our island.
The next letter is from Keith Williams from Newport and is entitled Adjusting Lights Would Have Helped Traffic. I'm not traffic management engineer, just an ordinary Newportonian cokehead. But even I can see that by not adjusting the Snooks Hill traffic lights to cater for the vastly increased traffic flow to Staples Road during the Isle of Wight Festival one-way traffic arrangement, the Highway Authority, i.e. the Council, are solely responsible for the appalling gridlock around Coppins Bridge and central Newport last week. As there is at least twice as much traffic using Staples Road during this time, doubling the green light time to enter and exit Staples Road would prevent this gridlock from occurring. Yes, there would be more delays for the inbound traffic in Fairley Road, but any tailbacks there will not cause the sort of delays, frustration, extra pollution and gridlock experienced by those of us unfortunate enough to actually live in the area. Surely it can't be that difficult.
This is from John Goddard in Ryde. I'm trying to trace relatives of mine related to the Chambers family. My grandfather, who died in 1965, was one of 4 brothers. His name was Frederick William Chambers, and he was born to a Morris Chambers in 1899. My father's 3 brothers were Herbert, also known as Herbie, Morris, known as Morrie, and Arthur. I believe Arthur and my Aunt Ivy, who lived above the post office in Lake, was the last of my relatives to go. He died approximately 4 years ago. Mrs. Munns, who has since died, was a guide at Morton Manor near Adgeston when I met her. She told me she could remember the 4 brothers at school after they would move the cows from the top meadow down the lane to the milking parlour. Her mind, even in her 90s, was as sharp as a razor.
And this letter is from Penny Watts from Sandown and entitled Universal Credit Withdrawal. Recently, we were treated to the leader of the House, Jacob Rees-Mogg, lecturing the public that it was right the universal credit uplift of £20 a week that's been a lifeline for so many was being withdrawn, and it was time for people to get back to work. There, in a nutshell, is a Conservatives' levelling up vision, a Dickensian vision of workhouse Britain, where you either work for paltry wages or your children go hungry. The perception around the cabinet table being we are all feckless and lazy. Perhaps they need to remove all the mirrors from number 10.
This is a letter from Daniel Roberts from East Cowes, and it's a copy of a letter to Bob Seeley MP. I've been grateful to receive 2 COVID vaccinations so far, and I encourage others to make the same choice. However, I'm now worried by a shift towards a policy of coercion. There is a great responsibility in government to protect people's health, but this is not the only important thing which needs protection at this point. British values of democracy, liberty and individual choice would all be damaged by measures which in effect force people to accept medical interventions against their will. Even with public support, this would represent a dramatic shift in the relationship between individuals and the state. Compulsory vaccination and a widespread health passport scheme also imply a system which would log citizens' daily movements. Even though intentions for this are good, it's a very dangerous step for a society which values personal freedoms. In the difficult decisions ahead, I urge you to keep these values so strongly associated with life in Britain at the forefront of discussion, as it may not be possible to roll back measures imposed in difficult times.
So the next item is from County Press Wight Memories and is entitled The Island's Little Known War Relics by David Wight. So throughout history, the island has always played a leading part in Britain's defence. Some of this heritage is well known, such as the Palmerston Follies, but then again some historic defences lay abandoned and hidden, such as the following ones featured here. So the first one is the Alan Williams anti-aircraft gun turret. What appears as something which looks as though it's been dropped from outer space, this turret can be seen situated near the St Boniface to Wroxall footpath number V8 and was probably placed in that area in order to help protect Ventnor's radar station during the Second World War. The next one is breather shaft for the old Ventnor railway tunnel. Also in that area one can see a circular round brick structure, and this is the breather shaft. Although built for railway use, it was planned to figure any nuclear attack during the Cold War period. Buses were to be parked within the tunnel, whereupon school children could be placed on buses to benefit from the protection of the tunnels. The structure lies close to the Williams gun turret and can also be seen from the footpath V8. Then there's the Second World War prison of war camp. During the Second World War conflict, many prisoners of war camps existed around the British Isles. However, little is known or recorded regarding one that existed at Hampstead Quay, Cranmore. Searching the undergrowth, however, reveals evidence of building structures situated within the area of the camp's existence. Some of the prisoners, upon release, stayed on the island, eventually marrying local women and taking up residence here.
The next item is Mulberry Harbour and D-Day relic. On the beach east of Woodside can be found at low tide part of a loading bridge which never made the shores of France. Now covered in seaweed, it can, however, on close inspection, reveal its intended use. The shores around the Solent played an instrumental part in the building and assembly of the huge invasion fleet. Many relics of this gigantic undertaking can still be found around the shores of the Solent. Nuclear fallout bunkers. Following on from the Second World War came the Cold War threat. Around the island, plans were made in the event of an attack. Some of these plans involved the construction of bunkers. The idea was to construct two-man bunkers whereupon, in the event of an attack, observers could inhabit these underground buildings in order to monitor levels of radiation, etc., following such an attack. A handful were built around the island and indeed still exist, but mostly on private land. The example in this article was photographed on the outskirts of Newport at Stapler's. The mystery structure. Lying in the middle of a field bordering the Whitwell to Ventnor Main Road stands a mystery structure. This smallish building, which is in advanced state of decay, can possibly be attributed to the Second World War. But for what purpose? It has all the signs of being some kind of shelter or observation post. Maybe one of the County Press readers may be able to highlight its past use.
So the next item is from My View, where a panel of columnists take it in turns to give their take on life as it's played out on the Isle of Wight. And this week it's from Jim Gibbons and is entitled Housing Crisis or Just a Case of Overpopulation. And he asks the question, do we really need to build even more houses on our green and pleasant land? When I first made my acquaintance with this island, one of its many charms was the acres, square miles of greenery, open land and woodland both. I immediately joined the Walk the Wight set, though I prudently settled for one of the halves as I knew I wouldn't do the whole thing in the set time. For the first 5 years or so, the weather was always good, and I decided the Mountbatten Hospice, who organised the whole thing with tremendous efficiency, must have special arrangement with those above. Then one year we walked through the rain, which converted the paths into rivulets. But it was always fun and the company was good, and I compared it in this respect to halls of people waiting to give blood. How often do you know you're in the company of good guys? Being in ancient Britain, I'm too old for that now. If I can organise myself a midlife crisis, I'll live to be 168. Since then, I've watched the land being steadily tar-macadammed and covered with houses. Being an incomer myself, I'm in a bad position to complain of this, though I wonder about the wisdom of so much building being done here, while we have to import our water supply in pipes under the Solent. However, if the government continues to allow immigration to the extent of a huge city every year, they have to be housed somewhere, and it's not just here, it's everywhere. Floodplains are being concreted over, woodland cleared, farms built on all over the kingdom. It's not an original thought, but we don't have a housing crisis, we have a population crisis.
And we still can't find the people to do the less popular jobs, such as picking vegetables and flowers. We should be stricter about people claiming benefits and refusing jobs or training. Back in the 1920s, the great economist John Keynes envisaged making people dig holes and fill them in again for their dole. Even he didn't envisage paying people for idleness, which was one of Beveridge's great evils. The idea of obstructing boats bringing illegal immigrants from France is obviously a non-starter. What we need to do is to make this country less attractive and publicise the fact. We're hampered by the fact that English, albeit American English, is taught worldwide, and the world knows that our NHS system is open to all, and our benefit system is immediate and over-generous. As a first minimum step, every person coming across in small boats should be fingerprinted and have their DNA recorded and be housed in Spartan, not to say uncomfortable conditions. How can it be right to give newcomers, who've never contributed anything to our commonwealth, better housing than the natives who've paid taxes and national insurance for many years? We're the densest packed population of all Europe. Perhaps it's time our elected leaders put up a notice saying we're full. In my last article, I asked, who said I'm worth 1,000 BBC journalists? That was Jonathan Ross. Now, who said this? Madmen in authority are distilling their frenzy from some academic scribbler of a few years back. Okay. This article is called "The Island Has So Many Hidden Gems," and it's a new feature called "No Place Like Home," where we're asking islanders about their favourite places on the island and what makes living here so special. We asked Lucy Thorne of Sandown what she likes about living here. This is a report of the interview. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Lucy. I'm 24 years old. I've lived in the island for 11 years and I'm in the process of starting up my own business.
What do you like most about the island?
I like the natural beauty of the island and regularly go for walks alongside my partner. The pandemic encouraged us to get out for walks and make us see the island in a new light, and we found so many places we never knew existed. There are so many hidden gems on the island. I share photos and write-ups of my walks across the island on my social media, and it's nice to hear that I've inspired people to try the same walks as myself and given them new ideas of where they can go themselves. If I had to choose a favourite spot, I'd pick Heaton Warren. There's something really special about it, but there are so many stunning views on the island.
For visitors, where would you recommend to go and see, or what activities would you tell them to try?
Well, if people enjoy walking, then definitely come for that, as they won't be disappointed. Even if they're not avid fans, walking fans, then give it a try. I'm sure they will be soon after that. If you're not into walking, in my opinion, Osborne House and Carisbrooke Castle are the best places to visit to learn about the island's royal connections and just for a fun day out, whether or not you're with family, friends or a partner.
What's the best memory of your time living here?
My best memory would have to be meeting my partner and making memories by going for beautiful walks together.
And which is your favourite pub?
My favourite pub is the Sloop because it's got something for everyone, from a help-yourself carvery to pizza with unlimited salad or even burgers. It's great for a meal with your family or a date with your partner, which won't break the bank, and is situated with beautiful views overlooking Wootton Creek.
What's the one thing which is gone that you miss the most?
I miss Seaview Wildlife Encounter. They had some really lovely animals that none other animal centres on the island have, such as flamingos. It made for a really nice day out and was probably the biggest place for animals on the island. And I'd love to have been able to take my partner there, who moved here more recently than myself and has a love for wildlife photography.
What's your favourite building on the island and why?
I think being able to choose just one is a bit optimistic as there are so many, but it has to be the churches on the island. I love to visit as many as I can and take photos. I recently walked around the whole of Ryde taking photos of all the churches, but there are so many stunning churches, especially those in the villages such as St Lawrence, Brooke and Gatcombe.
Where would you go for a special meal and why?
I've been on a date night at the Checkers Inn at Rookley before, which is nice, and again, a beautiful setting. But I've also been to the Royal Hotel in Ventnor. I've celebrated many family occasions there, whether it would be for an afternoon tea or an overnight stay with food and service, and the service has always been great. I also feel like you've entered into another world when you step inside, which is really nice.
Where's your favourite walk and why?
My favourite walk has got to be the Tennyson Down and finishing up on Headon Warren. I could not recommend this walk enough. Right from the start to the finish, the views are unbelievable and you can see for miles as far as Bournemouth and beyond on a clear day, and a brilliant view of Hurst Castle. It just makes you feel so calm and happy, and you're always surrounded by nature. Headon Warren is also a great place to watch the sunset and have a relaxing picnic with an amazing 360 degree views with a gorgeous view of the famous Needles Rock.
What's the one thing you'd change or you think the area needs?
We need more decent shops, especially in the island's main town of Newport. There's not much choice if you want to go clothes shopping now, and with so many premises standing empty for years, it's a shame to see it looking the way it is.
Some additional articles now. Vocal coach Kay Howard is starting a new Sing for Health vocal group. It will take place every Thursday from October 7th from 1:30pm to 3pm. Kay said singing is one of the best therapies for everyone. It's especially vital for mental health. And as we all need such a lift after going through such a terrible time with COVID, this new vocal group will help our community and is especially suitable for anyone with health issues. These can be conditions such as Parkinson's, stroke sufferers, or people suffering from anxiety. Sessions are £5 each and take place at the Chart Room, Gurnard Pines. Contact Kay on khowardmusic@gmail.com or on 07956 149 091.
And there's also plenty to see and do during the Isle of Wight Walking Festival. The first 50 walks in this year's Isle of Wight Walking Festival next month have been revealed. Visit Isle of Wight, the island's tourism agency, along with the Ramblers Association, the National Trust and volunteer walk leaders promise everything from gentle strolls to challenging hikes from when the festival starts on the 9th of October. Among the longest is an 18.5 long Eastern Yar Source to Sea, which is split over 2 days. The shortest is about discovering rock pools and fossils at Fort Victoria Freshwater. Ian Griffiths, a walk leader and chairman of Visit Isle of Wight, said, "I'm looking forward to welcoming people to join me and my fellow walk leaders to enjoy the island scenery. There are so many spectacular walks filled with adventure, history and fun. Now's the time to start booking yours if you're ready for a longer challenge alongside some of the island's river trails. It would be great for you to join me on some of my walks. The Wroxall Steam Railway, Sotchells Brook and Red Squirrel Trail, or a walk over 2 days following the Eastern Yar River from its source to the sea. You'll need to book to take part in and a further 50 walks will be shared soon. The Isle of Wight Walking Festival runs from until October the 22nd.
Wootton Bridge is set to beat the autumn blues with a one-off community festival called Bridgefest. Held tomorrow on Saturday, 12 hours of entertainment will take place at 5 venues: Brittlesford Farms Bluebell Cafe, the Cedars, the Sloop, the Woodman's Arms and Wootton Bridge Community Centre. The venues will be offering a mix of food, drink, music and other entertainment, starting with breakfast and ending with late-night music. COVID meant other events such as Party in the Park and beer and buses had to cancel, but Bridgefest aims to give locals something to be cheery about at the end of a difficult summer season on the island. A shuttle bus service will operate between the venues. Participants need to purchase a programme to use it. Priority bus tickets are also available. Festival organiser Darrell Pitcher said, "This is about giving our local venues a fillip at the end of a very challenging period for them. It's also about giving the people of Wootton Bridge and others further afield the chance to let their hair down for the first time in a long time. Programmes are available for £2 and priority bus tickets £5, both available to purchase from participating venues."
And there are smiles all around as island entertainers win a family award. COVID has made life difficult for entertainers all over the island, with many relying on live feeds and video chats and apps like Zoom. Island entertainers Steve-O and Kai are like many in the entertainment sector who have utilised tech to keep their shows on the road. Steve-O and Kai are father and son international family entertainers, covering comedy, magic and illusion for all ages. Since July, they've been getting back out there entertaining at parties, weddings and other events around the island, all the while raising money for charity. After forgetting about their nomination in August, the duo found out this week that they are this year's winners of the Southern Enterprise Award for International Family Entertainment of the Year. They said this is fantastic recognition for 40 years' work that Steve-O's been doing, entertaining people all over the country with an all-new Steve-O and Kai show premiering at the Needles attraction this October. It's sure not to be missed. The show takes place on Sunday, October the 24th and Wednesday, October the 22nd. To contact the entertainers, email stevo.tv4@gmail.com by calling them on 07900 527 878 or by visiting their Facebook page.
Medina Theatre is opening again and will host a couple of smash hit shows to kick off with. A Vision of Elvis stars award-winning Rob Kingsley, who was described by longtime Elvis friend, photographer and tour manager Ed Bonger as capturing the very soul of Elvis, his charisma and gestures, and he even walks like Elvis. A Vision of Elvis on tour has performed to thousands of fans in major theatres, festivals and arenas worldwide. It made history by being the first Elvis tribute artist to perform at the new Wembley Stadium to a crowd of more than 50,000. The show recreates the drama and intensity of some of the most monumental performances of the King's rhinestone-glittered career. It features his greatest hits, including Heartbreak Hotel, Blue Suede Shoes, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, All Shook Up, In the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, and much, much more. All costumes, instruments and stage settings are authentically recreated to give the feel and energy of a live Elvis concert, which promises to be the ultimate experience for any Elvis fan the world over. The show is at Medina Theatre on Friday, October 1st. On October 8th, homage will be paid to three other legendary acts in pop music history: Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton and Cream. Voodoo Room is packed with high energy and performed by some of the UK's finest musicians. The powerhouse performance will deliver the true spirit of the legendary superstars.
And Seaview Walk raises thousands for Retina UK. More than 70 walkers took part in Hopefully to Seaview 2021 in aid and awareness of Retina UK, raising thousands of pounds. This 5-mile walk is an annual event organised by volunteers Colin and Linda McCarthy. They said, "It was a brilliant atmosphere and wonderful people were able to come together for the first time in 18 months. We're so grateful to family, friends and supporters for their enthusiastic response and our wonderful helpers who made it possible. We're also grateful to Dan and Sam at the Alamo for staging the after-event reception with free food to businesses and to businesses for donating so many great raffle prizes. We're delighted we raised more than 4,100 towards research into inherited sight loss, with Sandown Rotary Club kindly pledging a further £1,000. To support the cause, visit www.justgiving.com/campaign/Hopefully to Seaview.
Buses were unable to serve parts of Knighton on Tuesday due to badly parked cars. Southern Vectis tweeted to warn customers it couldn't serve Institute Hill or the Buddle Loop. It said, due to poorly parked cars on Sandrock Road in Knighton, we regret to inform customers that Route 6 buses are unable to serve Institute Hill or the Buddle Loop today. As soon as we're made aware that the parking situation is improved, then we'll be able to serve the area again.
Legal Eagles praised by the Isle of Wight High Sheriff. The hard work of magistrates and court staff to keep the wheels of justice rolling throughout the pandemic was recognised by the island's High Sheriff. James Attrill hosted a reception for the island's magistrate at Shanklin Chine to recognise the efforts of magistrates. Mr Attrill commented, "The island is lucky to have a dedicated and experienced complement of magistrates. The last 18 months have put the court under considerable pressure, but with the superb support from court staff and magistrates have still kept the wheels of justice turning. The island community should thank these volunteers for their hard work and professional approach in helping to maintain law and order." The reception was an opportunity for Steve Howe, a magistrate for 39 years, to be given a long service award, having retired from the bench in May 2020. Gillian Dale, chair of the Isle of Wight bench, thanked Steve for his many years of exemplary service.
The latest government data shows more than 30 people are being treated at St Mary's Hospital after contracting COVID-19. The number of patients in hospital with the virus has fallen marginally since September 7th. Data correct on Tuesday, September 14th, and published last Thursday, showed 32 people with coronavirus were being treated at the Newport Hospital. The week before, that number stood at 34. Of the 32, 4 were being treated in specialist ventilation beds, down from 9 the previous week. On Monday, it was revealed another person had died in the hospital after contracting COVID, and another death was reported on Wednesday. The total COVID cases on the Isle of Wight since the start of the pandemic now stands at 11,281.
Climate strategy approved by Louise Hill. A step forward has been made in the Isle of Wight's fight against climate change. In an important and fundamental decision, the Isle of Wight Council has approved Mission Zero, the climate environmental strategy which sets out how the island can be carbon neutral by 2040, 10 years before the government target. The council only has direct control over about 1% of the island's carbon emissions, but has vowed to make all its assets carbon neutral by 2030, with schools following suit by 2035. The council has been developing the strategy since it declared a climate emergency in July 2019 and has come up with an accompanying action plan setting out 160 measures. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, the Cabinet Member for the Environment Environment, Heritage and Waste Management, said since the declaration 2 years ago, perceptions and ideas have changed, particularly with the recent extreme weather. He said, apart from the most blinkered people, we recognise that there is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. We are just a small part of the national and worldwide jigsaw, but we need everyone to do what they can, hence the strategy. Apart from carbon neutrality, our approach is to seek wider benefits to assist sustainable future and protect and enhance our environment here on the island. Some of the actions will encourage job creation in environmental sectors such as clean energy and energy efficiency, while also signposting private homeowners, landlords and new housing developments to meet future net carbon zero standards. The authority will have a maximum carbon offset of 15%, although rewilding and land use schemes on council-owned land. The authority will have a maximum carbon offset of 15% through rewilding and land use schemes on council-owned land. The strategy, Councillor Bacon said, will be constantly reviewed and updated as technology and circumstances develop, undergoing formal reviews after the first 9 months and then every 6 months after. Councillor Bacon said the climate strategy will form a matrix of what the new Alliance administration is trying to do.
The future of a Newport homeless hostel is now uncertain after the Isle of Wight Council rejected its request to take off a safety net timeframe. Deciding in favour of Castle Road residents who had objected to the scheme, the Planning Committee voted to keep a condition that limits a house of multiple occupancy, that's HMO, on Castle Road to operating for 3 years. The committee did so to ensure applicants 2 Saints operated in best practice and dealt with any issues properly. However, plans stalled since the original permission was granted in July due to funding complications. 2 Saints was hoping to receive money from Homes England to buy the B&B, make changes and charge an affordable rent. However, Homes England said it only supported projects with a longer guaranteed lifespan of 35 years. Speaking at the planning meeting, 2 Saints Regional Director James McDermott said there was a very real housing crisis on the island, which is only going to be worsened as the housing prices continue to rise. Mr McDermott said it was the last thing on their mind to bring this back before the Planning Committee, but wanted to confirm their commitment to the Council in reducing homelessness, in line with the Council's strategy through to 2024 to ensure everyone on the island has a place they can call home. He said the HMO would give people an opportunity to live their lives while bringing extensive support to the community. A Castle Road resident representative said they had lost all trust in 2 Saints. Local councillor Joe Lever, who was unable to attend the meeting, said the committee only had to answer one simple question to determine whether the application should be granted, whether the actions of 2 Saints or new information put forward significantly resolved the concerns of the committee had to warrant the removal. Councillor Matt Price, who suggested installing a time condition in June, said he'd come into the meeting wanting to be convinced by 2 Saints. Councillor Chris Jarman said it had been made clear to him that while the island had a housing crisis, it needed to be managed and well maintained to benefit everyone, and the opt-out clause of the application was critical. All but one of the councillors on the committee voted to reject the application, with Councillor Michael Beston abstaining from the vote. 2 Saints has been contacted for comment.
French Franks pit stop for Wiggins. 5 times Olympic winner Sir Bradley Wiggins enjoyed one of the island's best-loved treats on Saturday, a pit stop at French Franks. The popular eatery, which has branches in Ryde, Cowes, Newport and Newport Industrial Estate, welcomed Sir Brad and his fellow cyclists to the Cowes Cafe. It was particularly exciting for staff member Lottie, herself a triathlete. Sir Brad was leading the LeBlanc legendary joyriding tour along the military road at the weekend. The event was all about cycling and good food and has previously visited Perthshire in Scotland. Raymond LeBlanc had planned to be on the island for the twice postponed event but was unable to make the weekend. Instead, the Bibidum's Claude Bosey replaced him alongside Ashley Palmer-Watts.
Freshwater Fire Station has shared the details of a crash in Totland in which one of the casualties was known to the crew. The team attended a two-vehicle road traffic collision on the avenue and had to remove the roof of a car and free its driver, who'd suffered minor injuries. The casualty, a relative of a crew member, was taken to hospital. Speaking after the incident, a spokesperson for the freshwater crew said, "One of the hardest things about living in the community we serve is that occasionally we attend incidents where a family member, relative or loved one is injured. We're lucky in the fire service to have procedures, protocols and excellent support in place for such occurrences, but it's still a gut-wrenching feeling when you arrive to see a family member in distress. We attended a two-vehicle road traffic collision in Totland, requiring a roof removal and longboard extrication to free the driver, who was medically trapped. Thankfully, the driver, a relative of one of our crew members, is now home from hospital with minor injuries and recovering well. We wish her well as she continues to recover."
Horticulturalist David's career blossoms. A former apprentice of Ventnor's Botanical Garden was a runner-up for a prestigious award by the Chartered Institute of Horticulture. David Pearce of Knighton, David, 24, was Ventnor Botanical Gardens apprentice for 2 years, sponsored by the Friends of the Botanical Garden. He did so well that the garden's curator, Chris Kidd, named a variety of Echium after him, which was a rare honour. Chris said, "David found it in our yard and suggested I called it Pearce's Magnificent. It's a grey variety, so I called it Pearce's Grey." David went on to study at RHS Garden Wisley. Since graduating from there in 2020, David landed a job at Prince Charles's home, Highgrove, in Gloucestershire. He has just been appointed as head gardener at the luxurious 5-star Cotswold Hotel and Spa, Watley Manor, in Malmesbury, Wiltshire.
An unemployed Ireland man threatened to kill a bus driver before attacking 6 police officers, including hurling phlegm mixed with blood into the eye of one of them, was jailed by a Crown Court judge. Joshua Honan of Ocean View Road, Ventnor, was jailed for 18 months at the Isle of Wight Crown Court after he admitted making threats to kill a bus driver and police officer, 6 instances of assaulting police officers, possessing a knife and a public order offence, all on May 26. Some of Honan's vile threats, including the deliberate spread of COVID, were made to one officer in particular, which was shown to the court as police body-worn footage. Honan, the worse for wear through drugs and alcohol, was asked to get off a bus by its driver in Victoria Road, Sandown. This sparked abuse, kicking and striking the cabin the driver was in, and a threat to stab and kill him. Honan, 23, told the driver, "I'll stab you, I'll wait for you after work and drag you into a forest and finish you off. The last scream you hear will be that of your girlfriend." All the while he was trying to get into his cab. He then reached into his bag and said he had a big weapon. The driver believed he did, and that had Honan gained access to his cab, he would have stabbed him, said Edward Elton, prosecuting. He said his actions had put him in fear of his life. As the driver dialed 999, Honan tried to snatch the phone from him. The driver sped off, with Honan damaging the bus by hurling a roof tile at it. Honan got onto a different bus, but the police arrived, found a Stanley knife among his belongings, and arrested him. When told to step into the police van, Honan deliberately smashed his face against the van, then attempted to falsely accuse officers of an assault, despite the incident being caught on camera, said Mr. Elton. In the van, Honan told PC Taylor on the way to Newport police station, "Watch while I spit in your face, and you got COVID. I haven't had my COVID test. Good luck. I hope you're dead." Honan then made threats to kill the officer, together with vile threats to rape and cut members of his family. "You watch when I find you. You're going to end up on ITV News as the next dead Fed," Honan said. On your last shift, I'll cut you in an alley and slit your throat. Don't go out on Friday or Saturday because you're going to get stabbed. You won't make it home. Honan's threatening, abusive and violent behaviour didn't stop there. He made threats on his arrival at the station, and when taken to a cell from where he kicked out at police officers, injuring one shin, then he scratched the elbow and wrist of others. Honan also sank his teeth into the hands of an officer who was protected by stab-proof gloves. He combined blood and phlegm in his hand and hurled it at officers, hitting P.C. Lacey in the eye. The officer said Honan's act almost made her physically sick as she hurriedly tried to wash it away, fearing she may have caught COVID following his earlier threats to P.C. Taylor. Honan's record comprised 12 convictions for 24 offences, which include causing criminal damage and possession of a prohibited weapon. For Honan, Jonathan Underhill said his client had mental health issues and no recollection of what he did, so was shocked and appalled by his actions. Mr. Underhill added, "This was despicable, the way he acted, but he wishes to express genuine remorse." However, within a report prepared for the judge, Honan had suggested the police had made a meal of it. Recorder Barry McElduff told him, "You intended to cause fear of serious harm, specifically by disease transmission, through spitting, throwing blood and phlegm. There's a need for a strong deterrent message to be sent, so that those in any way tempted to act in this way will desist. It would also be necessary to reassure the public, and in particular those working in the front line, providing service and protection to others." Honan reacted to his jail sentence by causing havoc in the dock. It took security staff more than 20 minutes to subdue him.
Works at the Worst Junction by Laurie Little. Major work to improve safety is set for Smallbrook Roundabout, which has the worst accident rate of any island junction. The speed limit will also be reduced from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour on the approaches. The project by Island Roads for the Isle of Wight Council will introduce several safety features at Smallbrook near Ryde, which over the last decade has had 22 injury collisions recorded there. Work is due to begin on October the 4th and last an estimated 6 months, avoiding the peak tourist season and minimising the impact on wildlife. During work, the junction will be controlled by temporary traffic lights and Smallbrook Lane will be restricted to one-way eastbound towards Ryde. The non-residential end of Carter's Road will also be one-way eastbound from the last property towards its Ashy Road junction. If progress permits, the one-way restriction will be removed for the festive and the New Year period. Safety features include realignment of the approaches and introduction of new traffic islands, which will require traffic to slow down to negotiate the new roundabout. Visibility on the approaches will be improved, especially for traffic approaching from Smallbrook Lane and Carter's Road. There will also be additional street lighting, a speed limit reduction to 30 miles per hour, and anti-skid slowdown strips will be laid on the approaches. Some vegetation deemed poor value habitat will be lost to accommodate this scheme, but working with Arc Council, there will be a replanting scheme of native species with the introduction of 6 dormice boxes to enhance biodiversity.
So that ends today's reading. So it's goodbye from a very glad to be back, Howard, and
goodbye from Tressa. No scaffolding news this week. In Touch follows. The return to university. September marks the start of the new university term. We hear from some visually impaired students who are returning to their studies. They tell us about their experiences with university life so far and what they're expecting from this new academic year. We also hear from a former disability student advisor about what support is available for visually impaired students, and from Rachel Hewitt from the Vision Impairment Centre for Teaching and Research at the University of Birmingham about all things student finance.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. New term, new academic year,
new Education Minister. So after the past 18 months in which university students could be forgiven for thinking that what are supposed to be amongst the best times of your life could turn out to be amongst the worst, we wanted to know what blind and partially sighted students could expect as they return to uni over the next few days. Will courses be face-to-face? If they're online, how accessible will they be? What about social distancing rules? And what about getting any special equipment you need to keep up with your coursework? And there may be other issues which crop up in the next 20 minutes or so. We welcome back two students who reacted to the situation at the beginning of last academic year in very different ways, and two people with direct experience of offering advice to visually impaired students. Let's first catch up with Jimmy Bryden. Now, he began his maths degree last year at Birmingham University. So, Jimmy, first of all, looking back on that year after a summer to reflect, how would you sum it up?
It was an odd year. I really enjoyed my course. If I hadn't enjoyed my course as much as I did, I think it would have been absolutely horrible. It was quite good to be absorbed in that and not be focusing on lack of social interaction to a large scale.
On the work side, in the end, what proportion of your work was online and what face-to-face?
All of my work was online except from one lecture right at the end.
And what about accessibility? Because this is something that crops up quite a lot for visually impaired students. And of course, if you're mixing online and face-to-face, then, you know, in a way you can deal with the problems. Did you have accessibility problems?
Particularly at the start, there were issues with, how we're going to get lecture notes across that are accessible and how we're going to read them. And maths is quite a sensitive subject. It's got a lot of notations. So how are we going to deal with this? You physically can't meet someone to support you.
And how well did the university deal with any problems that you had? And who did you go to for help?
My academic tutor, and he provided me a lot of assistance. And also the lecturers themselves were very, very helpful. I could email them and say, could I have the lecture notes in this format, please? Or I'm having this problem, can I meet you? So everyone was very supportive.
Now, at the beginning of the last academic year, the pandemic was just flaring up again after appearing to be in retreat. Did you consider skipping the year and doing something else instead till it all blew over?
I wasn't sure if I was going to take a gap year or not. I was hesitant anyway, and then obviously with all the coronavirus, I thought, well, it's possibly easier just to go to university and then try and find something you can do in a gap year. You're travelling.
So in fact, you almost did the reverse of what you might have been expected to do and went for your first year straight away because of the coronavirus.
It was less of a thought out decision than that, but it's worked out quite well.
OK. Well, someone who did decide to take a year out and is now literally just starting her second year, in fact I think she's starting it today, which is why we can't talk to her live, is Caris Hall. She's returning to the University of Chichester, and I asked her to remind us why she decided to take last year out.
My main reason was just because there was so much unknown surrounding COVID. So it was all very much trial and error. The amount of lockdowns that was sort of put in place over the last year, that was sort of something I was really concerned about because I'm actually quite far away from home. And also sort of accessibility. So it's still a little bit prominent now, but things like being guided by people. I really didn't want people being made to feel uncomfortable.
And looking back over what's happened in that year, do you still think you dodged a bullet?
I really did. It was just mental health wise and everything being so confusing. I don't do well with that personally. So that was a really, really good decision. And I'm also a year older and that does make a huge difference as well, I do think.
So what have you been doing instead?
Honestly, sort of honing my skills with singing because that's the degree I'm taking, vocal performance now. Also helping my mum out with childcare. She's a single parent. So that actually gave me quite a lot of confidence with my skills and mobility, taking my brother to school. So things like that, really, really sort of life skills.
As you say there, you've decided to take a different course. I mean, just explain why and how that's working out so far.
So I originally applied to study English literature, which I'd wanted to do for quite a few years. And I started this English literature course, which was absolutely fabulous. However, I just personally couldn't cope with the degree of work and research and writing and reading that you had to do. I don't want to view it as a problem because it's actually brought me to a course that I really do think I'm made for, if that makes any sense. I'm only in my first week, so I haven't even started lectures yet, but I already feel really at home, safe. I know what I'm doing almost, even though I'm actually doing a classical performance degree and I've never sung classical in my life. I still feel very accepted.
But I believe there is one fly in the ointment, and that's been the financing and the disability student allowance. What's happened?
A lack of communication and a lack of accessibility would be the main reasons I would give. The online websites to use and then the forms to fill in are really not blind friendly, I would say. So I applied in May online and I got a notification saying we'll take up to 8 weeks to sort of process this. And after the 8 weeks, I received a letter saying because you've changed course, you need to reapply from scratch. This was August, so I had to sort of freak out a little bit and sort of get myself together and go, okay, I need help with these forms because you need to scan them. And I've been having many phone conversations with the DSA saying, look, when is this needs letter going to come through, which basically tells you who you need to contact in terms of the companies that can help you. And I still have yet to receive that letter, despite lots of other people ringing on my behalf as well.
Well, amongst the people who've been ringing on your behalf is us, actually. So the Student Loans Company say they are making changes to make it possible for visually impaired students to apply independently online. So they acknowledge some of the difficulties there. But they do say, as you've rather explained, the records show you made your application for DSA specifically for this course in August, following an initial application. So you feel that was a misunderstanding, really?
It really was, yeah. The systems are very, very shocking, actually. Communication is lacking. There's sort of no support in terms of where you are at. It's quite stressful. It's quite anxiety-inducing, if I'm completely honest.
Well, that's Caris, and we'll be hearing from her again a bit later on. But literally within an hour of that recorded interview last Friday, Caris received by email the letter which did confirm her disability student allowance. And that still means that she has now to apply to various companies for assistance, such as guiding assistance, a note taker, etc. Whether that happening within an hour is any kind of coincidence or anything to do with us getting involved, we can't really say. From past experience, that could still take weeks to be in place, whereas probably now is the time that she needs it most. Well, someone who's done a lot of work with visually impaired students, including on this issue of finance, is Rachel Hewitt from the Visually Impaired Centre for Teaching and Research at Birmingham University. Rachel, we frequently hear about this problem on In Touch. Why does the disability student allowance continue to cause people problems?
That's a very good question, Peter. It's very frustrating to continue hearing these challenges. Student finance have been engaging with this issue, but as we're hearing, there's still problems continuing.
Yeah, I mean, the Student Loans Company told us, we recognise that the current customer journey for students doesn't always meet their expectations. SLC is currently working with the Department for Education and the Welsh Government to reform the DSA service, and they say the improvements will enable all DSA students to apply via a fully online accessible application service with access to digital assistance and support at every stage of their student finance journey. And they say we want students to be at the heart of these reforms, and recently held the first meeting of a new customer panel. So, I mean, that all sounds good. Is that what you're expecting to happen?
I do think there's a genuine desire to improve. It's just, I think, the pace at which it's happening is disappointing. We've got students in the meantime who aren't able to apply independently. And this has been going on since I started this research back in 2015. It's just really been too long now.
And what are the implications of that? You know, if you're waiting for your allowance, what does that actually mean in terms of your course, your social life, possibly?
It can be so stressful. Going to university for the first time for any student is an extremely stressful time. A lot of unknowns, a lot to think about. You've got all these added barriers on top. This scheme, which is supposed to be supporting students, is actually causing them more stress. Ultimately, we found from our research that students were starting university without the support that they needed in place, which in cases some students went through even a whole term without having the equipment or the human support that they should have been allocated.
Listening to that, and with us is Liz Silver, who until very recently worked in disabled student support and emailed us after a programme highlighting a report which said that poor access was making it difficult for some students to cope at university. Liz, I think you think this problem of financial support for equipment has got worse.
In some ways it's got worse, in some ways it's got better. So much depends on the assessment centre and how fast the system actually works. Having a meeting liaising with the assessment centre and the assessor writing up the report, and then that report going back to student finance. Each of those phases can take, well, at least 2 weeks, and often longer the closer it gets to term. It can be very difficult, for a student to actually get the equipment they need at the time.
There was a change a few years ago, wasn't there, which said the government wanted universities to make more of a contribution to the various elements in disability student allowance. What effect has that had, and has that settled down at all?
I think initially it had a very negative effect, but I think it has settled down in my experience. One of the things that DSA used to fund were note takers for particularly students with visual impairment. And then the government said, well, for a lot of students, the universities will have to provide that service. But now an assessment centre can recommend an electronic note taker, i.e. someone who can take notes for a student and then type them up in an electronic format. But for a while, I think it was expected that if lectures, teaching sessions were recorded, then that was enough, and it clearly isn't. Being able to listen to a lecture and then having to listen to it again and again in order to make your own notes is very unfair on the student.
The Department of Education told us we remain committed to ensuring every student, including those with visual impairments, gets the support they need to achieve their full potential. And they said we expect all universities to make reasonable adjustments for their disabled students, as is required of them under the Equality Act 2010. Rachel, is that fair? Universities aren't poor, are they?
It's interesting they're saying they're reasonable adjustments. I think in many cases that's where it goes wrong, that actually the adjustments that universities make tend to be reacting to a problem rather than anticipating ahead what adjustments the student might need.
Rachel, whose job is it to make sure that exams are in an accessible form?
There might be some exams which are accredited by external organisations, and that could be more complicated, but on the whole it is the university's responsibility.
Jimmy, have you had any problems in that sort of area?
Most of my exam support have been open book, and they've been sent to me in the same format as the lecture notes that have been sent to me, so they've all been fairly accessible.
Open book means you are entitled to do research. You can look for information as you do it, is that right?
You could use the lecture notes or you could use the internet within reason. I found the online submission portal quite difficult to use, so I was able to email mine in.
I want to put a question to both Liz and Rachel. If you get into difficulties at university, whether it's work related or maybe more personal, where should your first port of call be?
I think initially the student should talk to the relevant disability advisor, who hopefully they will have had some contact with before they actually start at the university. Usually a disability advisor will write up a access plan, something like that, depending on what system the university has. It's really based on the students' knowledge of their own needs, which makes absolute sense. And then that should go to the relevant tutors or course leaders for them to put into place.
Isn't that where it sometimes gets stuck? Because what we tend to hear is perhaps lecturers don't know much about the mechanics of how a blind or partially sighted person has to work.
Absolutely, yeah. And in that case, the disability advisor can liaise with the school to explain what the issues are, or maybe set up a three-way meeting with the student and the personal tutor or the course leader or the module leader. But if there's still problems, if a student has to make a complaint, then they should also talk to the students' union.
Because, Rachel, I believe the suggestion is that teachers, lecturers should have awareness training in disability generally.
Absolutely. We'd expect that all lecturers have some understanding of inclusion. I guess the challenge comes when it's quite complex adjustments that need to be made. DSA actually can fund support from a specialist to bring in experts' advice from outside the institution.
Liz, just one quick thing on this before we move on. Is there a danger that maybe of sometimes being a bit unfair to university teachers? I'm guessing they don't see many visually impaired students.
Absolutely true. But what you hope is that when they do, instead of just saying, oh no, we can't do that, or why should I do that, that they'd actually be open enough to talk to the student, talk to the disability advisor or disability officer, and just to find out why a student needs those various adjustments. Disability equality training can be really helpful, but I think in a lot of places it's voluntary.
Let's move to that other vital element in university life, the social aspect of it. One of the things Caris acknowledged when we talked to her last year was that she hadn't made the most of those social opportunities in her first year for all sorts of reasons, and that anxieties about social distancing was one of the factors persuading her to take last year off. I asked her how she was approaching the new term from that point of view.
It's actually going really, really well, because obviously there aren't really any restrictions in place within reason. You have to be sort of aware of people and respectful of people, and that's something I'm really conscious of. However, the last sort of 5 days have been absolutely incredible. My course mates are just accepting of me, and my department leads and the lecturers within the department have been nothing but accommodating, and they have really gone above and beyond. I'm shocked at how incredible everything has turned out, really. Yeah, it's lovely.
What will you do differently? Because you did say that in your first year you did perhaps not make as much of the opportunities. What's going to change?
Well, my course is a very social course. You can't really sit in your room when you've got a module on ensembles and practice your ensemble part on your own. You have to sort of make sure you are making contact with your tutors, your colleagues and your course mates. So I think it's a very social course. So I sort of have to really put myself out there and go, hello, I'm Caris, could I please join you? And make people aware of how I am and what I need.
So what would you say to perhaps first years now? What would be your advice?
Put yourself out there. The worst that can happen is someone says, I'm not sure if I can do that for you, I'm really sorry. You move on, and people honestly will accept you for you. They will. People are very kind, and that is a huge life skill. Advocate for yourself, ask for help. And actually, it's not just blind people, visually impaired people who have to do that in the first few weeks of being a fresher.
Perhaps everybody should embark on a singing course. It sounds a very congenial thing to do. Jimmy, you're now embarking on your second year. It struck me when we talked before that initially you were more work orientated perhaps than a wild social life. Do you feel that your confidence might be higher now, that you might be able to take a few more opportunities to have fun?
In fairness, last year there wasn't very many opportunities for going out. I'm really excited to meet the people who are doing my course, and it's weird, but you feel like you haven't really joined the university yet because you've only met 6 people or something.
So you're going to do what Caris said and put yourself out there a bit more, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just finally want to go back to Rachel and Liz. What I don't want people to come away with thinking this has to be a very negative experience. Liz, I'm just wondering what you would say, particularly to first years.
Make sure you apply for Disabled Students Allowance. And if you're not happy with what you've been assessed for in terms of equipment, or if things aren't right, or if you find you've got additional needs, then make sure that you talk to your disability advisor, to the assessment centre, make use of who's around, what resources there are. Enjoy the course and enjoy the socialising bit as well.
Rachel, one bit of advice?
Most lecturers at university, most staff that you meet, most students that you meet, they want you to succeed. They want you to have the best experience that you possibly can. The absolute majority of students that I've worked with had a really good time at university. They had their challenges, they weren't free, but it was overall a really positive experience.
It only remains for me to wish Jimmy, Caris and indeed all other visually impaired students just starting out the best of luck for the next year, with the hope that some of what we've discussed will be helpful. And also thanks to Rachel Hewitt and Liz Silver for their advice. Do tell us about your own experiences whenever they happened. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, leave voice messages at 0161 836 1338 or contact our website, that's bbc.co.uk/in touch, from where you can download tonight's and previous programmes. From me, Peter Wight, producer Fern Lulham and studio managers Mike Smith and Philip Halliwell, goodbye.